So you want to build a Cetme C, you disassembled the trigger pack, its guts are everywhere, and now you want to put it back together after you demilled the goddamn thing. So the first step is to make sure this is the right way. An easy way to tell is that will be facing forwards. That's the thing that holds this important part, the ejector. Take this pin, set it down. Set this facing right side up. The way to tell that it's right side up is this thing holding the ejector is facing up towards your ceiling or your face. Take this circle and then ever so gently place it on the bottom. That's an important part. Next step is to assemble the actual trigger itself. So how to tell that this thing right here is facing forwards is that this is this way. This is facing the front end of your trigger pack, so where the ejector spring is going, not ejector spring, but the ejector is going to be. Take that and then you just slide it in like that. That's self-explanatory. And then you take this right here and you put it on. And so that's the easy part. The harder part now is to get it into the trigger pack properly. Jeez. And so getting it into the trigger pack is difficult because you have to align everything properly, and if you don't, the pin won't go through, and you're gonna want to pick up a 3-pack a day habit. But you shouldn't do that because cigarettes cause cancer. But hey, you know, I can't stop you. And you just want to. And if you're gonna pick up a habit, don't do 3 packs a day. That's a ridiculous waste of money. All right, man. You start off like, you know, a cigarette a day, and then you go up from there. You don't just start on a 3-pack a day habit unless you're like insanely hardcore. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean like legitimately eats motor oil for breakfast. But I think eating motor oil for breakfast would cause more of an issue than the cigarettes would. And then, so a way to do this a bit better is to hold the pin in, grab your receiver. Like I have got spider hands, so this is easy for me. But you just grab the receiver like this, and then you flip it over, make sure the pin is still held in place, and then reorganize and realign everything. It'll be easier if you've got ye old AK bayonet, because then you can just slide into the receiver and push some stuff so that it's the correct way. And I just hit the trigger, so that just ruined all the work that I did with this AK bayonet. The AK bayonet isn't exactly the most precise tool. You're probably going to want something more along the lines of a Swiss Army knife, or maybe even a toothpick. I think that might be a bit better for this whole process. And so now comes the annoying part of trying to force this pin back through. And yes, I do say force it back through because usually with firearms, you don't want to be rough with them. But with this one, if you're not rough, it's not going to get back through. And so if everything isn't lined up just exactly the way it's supposed to be, it is not going to work out in the slightest, which is bad. I mean, it's good for the gun because that means that if you don't have everything correct, it won't fire. Vis-a-vis, it will not blow up in your face. There we go. I just had to move that a little bit, reposition it, and then almost there we go, and that pin is through. And so the pins in this are probably going to want to fall out because they're sized perfectly. Next step is to get the horn spring in. And so the horn spring is this one right here. And the way that this has to be positioned is very, very specific. So this spring right here has to catch on the thing that catches the hammer spring. And so you have to take it and then work it under the squiggly. Here, let me get this really close so you can see. You have to work it under the squiggly so that it rests right there. You see that worn spot? That's where it has to rest, because this puts tension on the trigger. I was about to say trigger pack, but nothing really puts tension on the entire trigger pack. Well, I mean, I guess the hammer spring does, but that's not the point here. So that's what you're going to want to do. Just get it so that it rests there nice and comfortably. And, I mean, the easiest way to probably do that is just sit it down onto there. Or maybe, yeah, push it in from the top, push it in from the bottom, whichever, sounds like a lot of sexual innuendos. You just, you're going to kind of want to force it in. Yeah, that's the only way I can really put this. And then just make sure those horns are facing upwards towards the wall. You just gotta work it a bit until it finally just goes in. And then once it does, it'll be a happy day, as my friend Blake used to say. Man, I miss that Mormon. He was a good Mormon. Usually I'm not a big fan of Mormons. You know, I've got a funny story to tell to pass the time in this video. Well, they weren't quite Mormons. They were Jehovah's Witness, and if you know, they're about 50 times worse than Mormons. Because Mormons just come to your door and tell you about their religion, while Jehovah's Witness will come to your door every day for about 4 months. They really enjoy harassing people. So anyways, my father answered the door for Jehovah's Witness, which is a mistake. And they said, "Hey, why don't you come down and join our congregation?" My dad said, "Oh, no, thank you. I'm not too religious." Now, I am religious. My dad isn't, and so I'm not a Jehovah's Witness or anything. But anyways, so they leave. We think it's the end. It's not. They come back every day for a month because they think that my dad is ill. They think he's sick, and I've got it back together. And so those horns are going to be right there. You can see them. And so this pin will fall out really easily. And the only way to remedy that issue is to put the hammer in. And so the way the hammer is oriented is there, and then you push it back. And then you pin it in place. It goes into, I don't think I've talked about the holes that they go into, but that one goes into this hole. Everything here is pretty self-explanatory, so I didn't think that I needed to explain that part of it completely. But anyways, so, and okay, yeah, that's stuck in the goddamn ejector spring. Okay, there we go. I just said that. So there we go. All right then. Just make sure you got your hammer in, and the spring will push the horns down. You just got to make sure everything is pushed down, and you'll be all good. The springs will stay in place. But anyways, back to the story. So a Jehovah's Witness comes to our house every day for a month because they think my dad is sick, and they think he's gonna go to hell. And I mean, my dad's a pretty wholesome guy, you know. He's a good guy. But Jehovah's Witness didn't think so. So that's pretty much the extent of the story. I don't know why they eventually left us alone, but I can tell you right now that was quite the miracle. All right, and there we go. That ejector is, not ejector, but hammer is properly in place now. And then the next step is putting the ejector back in. So put a little bit of pressure on the hammer so that you can slide this in nice and smooth like. Slide that back in. And then the way to do this that's the easiest is to hook it on the bottom first and then hook it on the top. Just put a little bit of, oh shoot, put a little bit of tension on that. There we go. And you just want to slide it back in. And that's almost the spring. You just gotta fandangle with it a little bit to get it back in properly and wholly. There we go. And then you just put this final pin back into place. Put a little bit of pressure on the hammer. Put the pin back in place. And that is the finished Cetme trigger pack. And so you just reinstall it like you put it in. Put this in the 12 o'clock position and then make sure it's lined up. Slide it in. Easier said than done. Get a pair of pliers. Push this down maybe. There we go. Should be lined up perfectly now. Just put it back in. Wiggle with it a little bit. You might have to hammer it back in place. I don't think... Okay, there we go. And then that's in. That's it.